I'm doing my April wrap-up video a little bit earlier. It's actually only the 26th of the month at the moment, so I've got 4 more days until the end of the month. But I've currently kind of hit a burnout at the moment. I think I gave myself too many big books to read for my April tome Toplathon. And so I'm having like a little rest and just reading some light, easy graphic novels at the moment. So here's the wrap up. This is what I have managed to read this month. Again, I have books on this list that I don't own a physical copy of because I borrowed them from the library, and that's what libraries are for. So you'll just have to bear with me, and I'll try and put some images in for you so you can remember what the book is. So first up on my TBR list, I don't know if you remember, I had Dewey, which is a book all about a library cat. And I actually managed to read this at the very end of last month. It didn't take me long. It was an okay book. It wasn't more the life of a cat, it was more the life of people around the cat and the town where the library is, which has just completely escaped my head at the moment. I think if you want more exploits of a cat story, perhaps try Derek London's series of books that start with The Cat That Came In From the Cold. They tell you the exploits of Thermal, while also mingling in life of Derek and his wife and some of the villagers around him. Dewey, I think, is trying to do that kind of thing, but I don't think it's as successful as The Cat Came In From the Cold. Speaking of cats, mine's down by my feet at the moment. So next up on my list was Wayfarer. This is the second book in the Passenger duology written by Alexandra Bracken. I have to say I enjoyed Passenger more than I enjoyed this one, and Passenger had its issues. Pretty much the same issues that are in this book. It comes to a screeching halt. You know, the previous one has ended on quite a big moment, and this one grinds to a halt. And then we have the whole info dump chapter again, and it just seems to take ages to get going, which is ridiculous because we've just spent 400 odd pages on the previous book. So this was a bit more of a slog to get through than it should have been. I still like the concept of the story. I liked the ideas going on in here, and I have to say I like some of the secondary characters a lot more than I like the main characters. I'm glad I've read it. I will probably reread it again at some point, and I might enjoy it more next time, I don't know. But if there was a collection of short stories set in this universe, I'd probably really enjoy that. I then read Ink and Bone by Rachel Caine, which is the first book in the Great Library trilogy, I think. I have to say I loved this book. This book was so good. The idea that the Great Library of Alexandria never fell, that library and books is all powerful, but as all power is, it's corrupted and it's not being shared equally, and it's all about controlling the knowledge that people have access to. And I really, really like this, so I must get my hands on the other books in the series and read them because I just enjoyed this book so much. I then started my tome Toplathon, which started as I went on holiday. I spent a week up in Scotland this month. So you can imagine I didn't actually have time to do much reading. I started the tome Toplathon with Strange the Dreamer by Lani Taylor. This is the first book in the series. I loved this book so much. It was so different from everything else I've read this year. It had a real fairy tale feel to it. It was really poetic to read, and I enjoyed it a lot. I know some people found it hard to get into, that they didn't understand. When the character jump happened, they just didn't get where that was all coming from. I didn't have any problems with that. You know, you just wrap yourself up in the world and go with it, and the answers are given to you as you read. And I just really enjoyed this, and it's also a beautiful edition. So yeah, I'm very pleased. So the second tome I managed to read was A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This is the first in the All Souls trilogy. As you can see, it's a bit of a whacking tome. This is almost 700 pages, so I was actually reading more than 200 pages, more than the 500 page limit. So no wonder I'm exhausted really. But I really like this one. It took a while to get going. There's a lot of character set up at the beginning. Sort of I don't want to use the word mundane, but everyday things that the characters were doing were described, and the amount of food described in this book makes you so hungry. And there's copious amounts of wine drinking here. You know, don't do a shot game while reading this book because you'll be sozzled very, very quickly. And I couldn't help but think, how is this going to be adapted for screen? For those that you don't know, the BBC are doing a screen adaptation of this book at least. They are working with Deborah to do it, and I'm just wondering how they are going to get this onto screen, because there's a lot of character build up and development in sort of the first 100 pages, even 200 pages, before our plot really kicks into overdrive. And I'm wondering, if they're too faithful to the book, it's going to be a very slow series. And the BBC audience are not known for being very forgiving. So I'll be interested to see how that translates. But I really enjoyed this book. I will be picking up the second one. I'm probably going to have to go and buy it because my library doesn't have a copy of it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more about Diana and Matthew. So that was the end of the Tome Topathon. So I only managed 2 books in that readathon, which, you know, it's my first readathon. Like I said at the time, I aimed very, very high for what I thought I could get in. I effectively only had 1 week of doing it, so I can't beat myself up too much. I read nearly 1,200 pages because I then started ploughing my way through the Fables series. I actually did complete book 1 within the readathon fortnight, so I'm quite chuffed with that. But over the past few days, I've been reading the rest of the volumes that I've got. I've got the first 5. I will actually be reading this one tonight. I can do one of these in about an hour, so it's not too bad. Fables is a series of graphic novels that follow the fairy tale and various other characters from stories as they try to adapt to life in our world. They're actually based in a street in New York. They've created a fable town. They also have a farm, which is upstate, where all the non-human looking fable creatures are allowed to live. It follows the characters and the conflict that they've got with the adversary who effectively kicked them out of their homelands. There was a massive war and they fled. They had no choice, they fled. And so we've got events leading up to, set during the big war in the homelands, and the main plot line, which is set in Fabletown, centuries after they were kicked out of their homes. I would say, yes, this series gets rave reviews, but it takes a few issues before this series finds its feet. Certainly the first couple are pretty bog standard. There's not huge character development going on. Everybody behaves as you would expect them to behave. The big bad wolf is a noir private eye. Snow White is, well, she's just a woman on the page, to be honest. She doesn't even have much personality. So reading through them back to back as I am, it's certainly very clear that volume 4, which is the thickest volume, March of the Wooden Soldiers, this is where character development actually starts happening. This is where main plot starts happening, which is really interesting. It's taken quite a while for this whole universe to be built up into a way that Willingham is happy to then tell his main storyline. Certainly I would say some of my favourite characters in this series are Little Boy Blue, who's very loyal, very honourable, very courageous chap. I like the relationship he has with Pinocchio, who is well, as you can imagine, a very grouchy middle-aged man in the body of a little boy, which, you know, is so frustrating. I like Flycatcher, who is the Frog Prince. He doesn't get much, but what he does get is actually quite funny. Prince Charming is a right creep in this series. He's an absolute arsehole. And yeah, he's particularly unlikable in this series. I like the way they've woven in that Prince Charming has been married to Snow White, Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella, because obviously in the fairy tales we only know them as Prince Charming. So that's quite funny. But yeah, so first 5 volumes of Fables. And finally this month, my husband and I have been doing our bedtime read. This month we've got Orcs, book 1, Bodyguard of Lightning. This is book 1 in the First Blood series. These are written by Stan Nichols. It's a pretty bog standard fantasy series, except the orcs are the heroes this time, which is quite a nice spin. Certainly it's got some interesting plot points. There are some issues with, oh, well, we'll go and do this now, and it's like, well, why are you doing that? And some of them characters, particularly our main character, I don't feel like we know him very well. He's the leader of the group. He's a bit impulsive and he doesn't get on with everybody else, but that's about all we really know about him. So we've got 1 chapter to go, which we'll finish tonight. But it's quite an enjoyable tale, and yeah, we've got the rest in this trilogy, so we will probably get around to reading them at a later point. So that's my April wrap up. As you can tell, I've kind of had a bit of a hit and miss month. There are lots of books that were on my TBR that I haven't actually managed to read yet. I had a DNF this month, Stormbird, which was book 1 in the War of the Rose series. I got about 30% in, and I just wasn't engaging with what was going on. The problem I felt with it was a very well researched story, but it was told as chapters of a history book, and I didn't actually get to relate to any of our main characters. I mean, even the fictional one that was created for us, I would much rather have followed his story through the historical events that we were privy to and see how he experienced the War of the Roses rather than being told the War of the Roses. I mean, Margaret, who ends up being the wife of Henry V, she's an interesting person, but I don't really get to know her. And the trouble is, I think the author was kind of stuck between wanting to be respectful to history and these real people, and also trying to tell a story. For me, it wasn't working, and so I left it. And I might pick it up again because, obviously it's a very interesting period in history, and to be honest, it does show how many morons are in the system. How many men really think they are the be end all of everything, and everybody should worship them, and it's like, no, really. So, the Battle of the Roses is certainly a messy time in our history and a very interesting time in our history, but for this time I just wasn't getting on with this book, so I left it. I also haven't read This Savage Song by V.E. Schwab. Haven't got around to it, just didn't fancy it. I haven't read Heartless yet either, by Marissa Mayer. I picked it up a couple of times, but I kept putting it down, just not in the mood. And I hate to say it, Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas. I'm itching to read this one, but I just don't feel like I've got the energy at the moment to do it. I've done the prologue, and that's it. And yeah, so I might tackle that one next month when I feel a bit more with it. So, I could look at this month and say it's been a bit of a disappointment. I haven't read what I wanted to read. I had a DNF. I've not done as well as I wanted to in the readathon, but I can then look at it back and say, well, I had a week on holiday. I read 2 massive books this month. I've done a series of graphic novels, so I can't be too disappointed. I think I've done all right in the end. I've managed to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books. 10. I've managed to read 10 books this month. That's not bad. It's not as high as it has been in the past. 5 of those have been graphic novels, so it's kind of a little cheat. But I've enjoyed them. I would say Ink and Bone, particularly a highlight. I really enjoyed Discovery of Witches, and Strange the Dreamer was very, very good to read. A very interesting read, but not for everybody. It has its own style. So there's my wrap up. That's going to need a lot of editing. Thank you for watching. Please follow me on Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter. The details are in the description box down below. Let me know what you've read this month. Link me your videos, or just write it in the comments and I'll scroll down and have a look. I'd be lovely to know what everybody else is reading. I will be posting TBRs probably next week at this rate. I'll have to wait and see. Thank you very much. Happy reading. Bye everyone.